Hey guys, so we are here to talk worldwide rankings. So the new athlete ranking system that CrossFit dropped kind of details on yesterday. Just whether we think it works for semifinals. Yeah, just sort of our initial thoughts on it. We dug into it a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess from our perspective, pulling data from friendlong.com, we were able to kind of pull open rankings, quarterfinals, semis, and games from 2022, as then also open and semifinal rankings and games from 2021. To this point, there isn't a official worldwide quarterfinals ranking for the 2021 season. Some CrossFit's putting that together, or are just gonna fudge it until they recalculate after this year's quarterfinals in a month. So we'll see it from that perspective. And I think, well, we're taking a look at it. There'll be lots of people who can tell you who the top 10 are. It's Tia, spoiler alert, she's number one. But more taking a look at it from more of a holistic season, how it's going to impact the spots available, what the strength of field looks like, from a kind of continent versus continent, like Oceania versus North America, at that level. So we're going to be talking about North America as kind of one unit at this point, since we haven't broken down where everybody lives, and that can certainly change between now and when semifinals kick off.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing where everything's sort of unofficial. Well, it is all unofficial. We're looking at the 2022 semifinal athletes by continent. That's really how we're looking at it. And there are some data gaps in some of that quarterfinal stuff, but we've got pretty much everything else to kind of calculate out to get a general gist of how those continents would have looked against each other with the 2022 semifinal athletes. Yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so where do you want to start with just like, do we think it's working for what it needs to do, or we want to end off with that?
I guess why don't we kick it off with your first impressions of how it worked out?
Um, well, my first impressions have sort of changed. My first impression was without like looking at numbers or anything, just actual impression when it kind of got kicked off yesterday was that I like it that it is only going to look at the athletes that are competing at the semifinal because there's a lot of like Oceania is so strong. Yes, Tia is amazing, but that doesn't inherently make anyone that's below her good. So with especially like this coming out at a year where the most dominant female is out of the season because she's pregnant, I'm kind of happy that she doesn't have an impact on the Oceania reason because her strength applies to nobody else. So I like that it's going to be calculated after quarterfinals for the athletes competing at those semifinals. That was my like first like yay thought of it's not looking at the region, it's literally looking at the athletes competing.
Yeah, I guess that it is good perspective to have it. I guess you're not rewarding past results, or you're not giving credit to people for their past or other people's past results.
Yeah, like um they're not being penalized in any way because of population. Like they're not it is inherently the athletes that make it out of those continents and how strong are they ranked worldwide with a little extra in semifinals and games kind of things. So that's what I like. What was your first like thought on it?
Yeah, I guess when I took a look at it and just saw the weightings, like obviously it works from an elite perspective. Like the top athletes are the top athletes. It seemed like an overall ranking. Like it seems like there's a lot of weight put into the quarterfinals and the open in terms of determining the actual results. Because like I guess looking at the table, I don't have the exact table in front of me, but you can see you can be 90% in, or the I guess for men's semifinals you can be 600th in worldwide semifinals, and that will get you 1900 points. But um, you can be whatever this person is, like 27th in semifinals, and that gets you 15 points. So the level of um, the scoring or the weighting of scoring seems to be so much or heavily skewed to the opening quarterfinals, except for those elite individuals, which I guess when you are choosing the games, like there's a lot of like in Oceania, you have your top 4 or 5 men, your top 4 or 5 women who are super strong, but then it falls off a cliff after that. That I see how they do under or wait the semifinals, but in terms of like the quarterfinals, to get into the 95th percentile at quarterfinals, like it isn't a big challenge for most of these athletes. So it just kind of squishes everybody together. Where like you see this guy, I'm trying to find out his open. It's Hilmer von Mansigan, who is I guess out of Africa. Whatever he was 997th in the Open this past year, 14th at his semifinal. 563rd in worldwide quarterfinals, and he has almost similar points to somebody who finished second at quarterfinals. Like it seems to be there's all the weight is in those two events that it kind of almost negates it because the I guess the scaling is so minuscule to have each percentile be 10 or 20 points different, which is ultimately like 500 people in a competition.
Yeah, the granularity is not there. Like in, I think it was the 2021 Open, like to be in the 99th percentile, you have to be over like 1152nd for women and over 400 or 1440 for men. So like that's the entire elite field.
Yeah.
Well, not entire, but like the majority of them are all, so they're all getting the same points. And then quarterfinals is a bit more divided up because there's fewer people, so percent matters more. But it's still like it's not really separating the top people in any manner that means anything. Like it's just not
Yeah.
granular enough. So it's kind of like a bit of like, what is the purpose of the ranking? Is the purpose of the ranking just to seed out those extra games tickets? In which maybe having more granularity at the top of the leaderboard through open and quarterfinals would put more weight on where the top people in the world really are to seed those tickets into semifinals? Or is it just to have the games people show up at the top so sponsors know who's at the top? Like it's kind of like what's the intention of the calculation?
Yeah, I guess if it is for the games, like it's just did a quick poll from the Open. So out of the 586 athletes that competed at quarterfinals last year, like the worst finisher was in the 94th percentile of the Open rankings. So everybody who is going to semifinals is between 940 and 1,000 points. There's only two
Yeah.
people with 1,000 points, so it's 800 or 584 athletes have either 990 to 940 points, which there really is no differentiator over there when you
Yeah, that's
kind of
not enough.
average it out over all those athletes.
Yeah, so that's where like the semifinals rankings kind of plays in, but then those semifinals are only ranked within those athletes in that area. So the people who win the semifinal, even if they would have been 30th at a different semifinal. So those athletes are getting like strength based or numbers that are being used to calculate strength when it's not worldwide. So it doesn't inherently calculate strength because they're at a semifinal that doesn't have the top end competition there. You know what I'm trying to say?
I think so, yeah.
That like winning Africa gets you how many points? 4,000 points. And winning Oceania gets you 4,000 points. But from what we've seen of the African athletes at the games, strength wise, they are not equivalent to the winners of Oceania.
Right.
So they both the granularity in the open and quarterfinals is not there, and then they get the same 4,000 points that someone else gets, and then it's at the games is the only time where they're brought back down again. Like, it's a strength-based number, but getting 4,000 points at a semifinal that's not that strong. Are they equivalent athletes?
Yeah. Well, we know that isn't true just based off the game standings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like based off of that, like it's almost the cycle's almost going to just continue that because of the strengths. Like I don't know how you bring up a continent based off of this model because like inherently, unless like somebody out of unless Guy wins the games, how just due to like the sheer volume of numbers, like how are they going to pull up their the South African number high enough to justify more game seats without winning the games?
And even winning the games, so you win the games, you get 10,000 points, um, added to your region, but then you divide that by 30 athletes. Like, it's actually not that significant. Like, we've put together, like, the by continent, what the, like, average points are kinda thing, and, like, 300 points is not, like, a massive, impact in terms of ranking that continent. Like, with having one athlete do well
Yes.
isn't gonna magically make South America get more spots, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I guess like running through the numbers, like if we take a look at the women's side, so right now, just kind of our rough back in the napkin kind of ballpark numbers. Europe's at 8,799 points per semifinal athlete. North America, 8,634. With Tia, we'll come back to this in a second. 7,481 for Oceania. Then 6,206 for South America. Africa is 6,117. And then Asia is 5,980. So again, like there's a huge weighting to Europe and North America. But I guess to quickly take out Tia here from the rankings.
But in terms of waiting for North America and Europe is they had more people at the games, and they had more people get more points in the semifinals as well.
That's again like just purely based off numbers. Like they're always going to get more points for semifinals because they have 60 people at semifinals.
Yeah.
So I just took out Tia's points. So they went from whatever it was 7,400. So Oceania is now down to 6,567, which again, like take out the top athlete in the world for, I guess, 2 seasons in terms of rankings. But now Oceania, from a strength standpoint's marginally ahead of South America. So it takes away all of their advantage. And likely they would have gone from 4 seats to back. Now they're probably at the minimum at 3 again, just based off of this number.
Yeah,
Because you lose the
so
top athlete.
yeah, because 'cause she's got, like, top points out of, like, everything for 2 seasons that she drops, but if you add can you add something like 10,000 points to let's run through the men's numbers of by continent and then add, like, 10,000 points to Guy in
Okay.
1 season and see if it actually changes, like, would South America to me, it's not gonna be shocking. He could win the games, and it's still not going to pull South America up in any meaningful way, is my guess.
Yeah, so I guess on the men's side, so North America is first, 9,104 points. Europe is in second, 8,738. Oceania is third, at 6,852. South America is third, 6,639. Asia, 6,372. And then Africa, 600 or 6,183. So again, similar to what we saw once we took Tia out of the women's side, like North America and Europe are several thousand points ahead of all these other continents. But I guess like in our hypothetical situation, we say Guy won the games, give him, I guess the 10,000 points for last year versus the 2,200 that he won. I guess like Oceania jumps, or no, sorry, South America jumps from 66.39 per athlete to 68.97. So like it's not really a meaningful difference.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like the granularity is not really there through the open and quarterfinals to show actual strength. That the ones that have more games tickets that can potentially get those extra points are the ones that will come up. So if you have more athletes going to the games, you'll forever have more athletes going to the games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Again, don't know how you break the cycle. And I guess, getting to the games, like the top end certainly rewarded, but then like the bottom of the barrel, like whatever, Elena Cartelas Sanjula, like she finished 39th, I believe. And so she got 50 points. And so,
that doesn't really do anything.
yeah, like 50 points in the grand scheme of things doesn't do anything, I guess. But then, like, you're also not really getting that much for semifinals in terms of like if you are one of the last place people in semifinals. So again, it seems interesting that you're not being rewarded to get to the games comparatively to the open, where a 50-point difference in the open is 10,000 spots. Like you can't tell me like there isn't much of a difference there compared to somebody who makes the games.
Yeah, the granularity of point value across the season is weird, which kind of goes back to the like, what's the intent?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they're really going to hit the mark in terms of those extra, is it 17 games tickets that have no spot?
Yeah,
Like,
it's 17.
I
Yeah, because
don't,
like even if you like whatever hypothetically Oceania, like if you had like the three men spots, like even if they all finish top 10, I don't think it's a meaningful number to pull you up to get a fourth spot. I guess
yeah.
like how they're rewarding them still kind of hypothetical, but um,
Yeah, they haven't like said how they're rewarding the spots. All we know is that this is sort of, we know the percentile business, we know the level that the points are being given out at. And that's all we know. And at the moment it's kind of just not seeming like enough. Like there's parts of it I like that it's actually looking at the athletes that are there. Cause then something like Krenikov moving, like switch him from Asia and see what happens there.
um, well, I guess yeah. So Roman, so for him to move, I guess Europe. Or yes, yeah. So
Asia.
Asia with Roman had 6,372 points per athlete, and then so it dropped them down to 5,980. Like, which again, you take the top athlete out of there, it's going to have a pretty significant impact. Um, but I guess again, like if they're guaranteed two spots, last couple of years that second competitor has been in the bottom five of the game. So is that just going to kind of further push that kind of group a little bit lower?
Well, and I guess that's why some of these continents they do still have like multiple tickets. Because I know there's lots of debate about like should all of them just have one. Like coming into the season, blank slate, for sure one will come from every continent. Like should Asia just have one? Or should they have two? Because like on the men's side, now they're the like weakest. And like there is some assumptions in our data for sure in terms of quarterfinal stuff because we don't have it for 2021. Um, so there are assumptions in our calculations, but
Yeah.
yeah, like, does this make a case for everybody to just have one spot, or does this make a case for something else,
Yeah,
like
I
the
guess like
current
we need to have
system?
more granularity on the allocations to see how it would actually impact, like how those extra seats are going to get picked. It just at this point, it seems like they're going two spots in North America and Europe.
Yeah, like, that's I don't know. I liked it originally. Now I'm not in love with it. I guess it's to be determined on what it is that they're looking at in terms of giving out those extra ticket spots. But it's kind of like the more people that go to the games, the more points you get. So then, but if you don't have people going to the games, you can't
Yeah, you
get the
can't give
points.
your chances. I guess it's
And
interesting. Oh, you can
and
finish up.
and even like North America and Europe, there's more points given in the semifinals because they're proven to be stronger. So like it's not like I have a problem with it, but like yeah, I don't think it's a system that has any way of ever changing and ever having more people from other places come, I guess.
Yeah, with the lack of separation in opening quarterfinals, like you can't differentiate yourself. Like needs to have a bit more of a sliding scale, like you see for the in-person comps, in order for a continent to rise up. Because like even like when you look at it, oh, wrong one. Like the lowest point total across the board is between 5,200 and 5,800, or if I 5,200 and 5,800 across, like depending on the region. So like you can't tell me the last semifinalist in North America is going to be of the same caliber of the last one out of Africa, but their points are almost identical.
Yeah, so even like if I want to do this percentile thing, like do it in so the lowest 2022 semifinal qualifying athlete um was like 8,000th in the open last year. So if you want to do a percentile sliding scale, do it on the top 10,000 in the open. And if you're outside of 10,000 in the open, you get 0
Yeah,
because then you're using percent like kind of like quarterfinals is in the 5,000 sort of range, but like cap it or have set like first 200, 100, 200, 200, 300. Like just you can't have one point section contain 1,100 places in the open
yeah,
with the goal of this to say who's the strongest, to calculate the strongest. That I would almost just take semifinals and games out of it. If you want strength of semifinal, look at the current year open and quarterfinals. Because someone like, say, I don't know if they did it or not, but like Annie and Con, they went team last year. So because well, they both did the open, I would have to look, but that search function's not working, to see if they did individual quarterfinals. But with athletes like that, to then bring their strength to say Con's back in Oceania this year. So Con should have done the open and individual quarterfinals last year. So then he was bringing his strength to Oceania because him going team doesn't make him weaker. He just didn't compete. So if you want worldwide strength seeding, you have to have people ranked against each other worldwide and calculate on that. And then people like Khan, who would like maybe wants his points or if sponsors are going to use it or whatever, that maybe those team athletes would then also still do quarterfinals to get those like ranking points. So then be like, oh, I'll go team this year, but then next year if I go back to individual, I'll still have my points to bring my own strength to the field. So then in hopes that with Con Porter back in the mix, in Oceania, that would bring the strength numbers back up. Or they could just look at this year where it's like open, quarterfinals, Con will do both. His strength will
Yeah.
then be applied. That I don't know. I was keen. Now there's some serious holes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess like just like in terms of like the lack of differentiation, I was looking. So kind of Oceania men. So you got Jay Crouch. He won this year's semi, came second last year, been to the games 2 years in a row, top 30 finishes both years, has 1,300 or 13,940 points, versus Royce Dunn, who did not go to the games this year, finished top 20 last year. Yeah, so I guess like Dunn won the games once out of the past 2 years, finished top 20. He has 950 points from his games experience. Jay Crouch has been to the games 2 years, has two top 30 appearances, and has 1,000 points in games spread. So even though like there wasn't a significant difference in terms of placements at the games last year or in 2021, I think Crouch was 22, 23. Dunn might have been like 16th or 17th. And Crouch has a second games trip and only has 50 points more. And then Crouch has just had 2 seasons that are significantly better, but he's only 1,500 points in the grand scheme of things ahead of Royce Dunn. Like it just,
Doesn't make sense.
yeah, it seems like there are some gaps there.
Oh, and then I was looking at it. It was like Jason Smith versus Keelan Henry. So Jason Smith has a higher point ranking than Keelan Henry because he did better at the games the year that he went to the games. But Keelan Henry beat him in 2022. So shouldn't Keelan Henry probably be the highest ranked African male because he is the most recent winner of the African um, semifinal? But because the 2021 points aren't at all like weighted less, Jason Smith has points on Keelan Henry.
Yeah,
Which so then that will bring Africa up because they sent two different guys
yeah,
kind of to the games. That so Africa might be possibly have a leg up on other like Asia the last few years. Like they haven't actually had all their tickets like used, like with visa issues and stuff. Like I think they've maybe had one guy on the men's side in 2021.
yeah.
Um, so then like those continents aren't getting anything in terms of extra points to try and bring up that region.
Yeah, like it almost seems you get rewarded for consistency. Like you'll have, if you have the same 30 people go to the semifinal 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row, you'll get 2 years of semifinals in there. Whereas if you have a bunch of turnover, like you don't get those points. But I guess like you do bring up the point of waiting between 2021 and 2022. Um, like just looking, the obvious kind of one here is like Ricky Garrard. He couldn't compete in 2021, but even with his third place finish at the games, he has 9,970 points, which is pretty significant. Where Tudor Magda, who went to semifinals last year, made it to the games this year, has 9,980 points. So who I guess like from a weighting standpoint, like who's going to bring more to the table in terms of competitiveness at a semifinal? Is it going to be Ricky or is it going to be Tudor?
Oh, 100%. Like
Yeah,
it should be Ricky. Like
and you think of like all those athletes who have had injuries over the past couple of years, like Bethany Shadburn, like she's going to go to a semifinal and pretty much has nothing to show for it, but has a bigger impact on the competitiveness of it than I don't know
Yeah, if
Just
she's
picking a
healthy.
random person here, like Molly McGrandy. Like Molly McGrandy went to the semifinals this year and did all right, but um, Bethany Shadberg's probably bringing 0 points to the table, where McGrandy will have 7,500.
Yeah, and that's where, like, it's kind of since we've been doing this, like, through the fantasy fitnessing games and just digging into all the data and stuff, is that it's kinda like past data means nothing. Like, look what happened to Sam Kwon. He had some allergy, autoimmune stuff going on and couldn't perform. And then last year, he made it back to the games. And everyone's like, "Oh, he's inconsistent." No, he had something happen one weekend of
Yeah.
his life. And that doesn't inherently make him less competitive or bring less to the table because something happened. Emma Tall, Chandler Smith. Well, I think Chandler Smith just missed. But um, having one bad weekend doesn't inherently make these people less of a threat or bring less strength to the field. I have no genius ways of capturing that either,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, I think
not
you
there.
like current year, like do your current year open, you're doing current year quarterfinals. Like if you
And at
are
a
fighting for a
granularity that
spot
means
and
something.
you want it to mean something, like sell your soul. Like don't, yeah, like I guess like those North American athletes don't need really, they just need to push in quarterfinals to get to the next stage. But like all they need to do is the top 10% of the open. Like they can do whatever it takes. Like Kelsey's dropping dumbbells across the gym and still making it to quarterfinals. But that probably impacted him by like 10 points in his worldwide ranking, which unless you're
Yeah,
giving a bonus out for this worldwide rankings, like athletes don't care. At least the top athletes don't care. Like it's not going to mean anything to those top 20 men and women who are always make it to the games, whether they have 13,020 points or 11,900 points, just as long as they make it to the games.
well, because that's like, so I think it was the South American men. Wasn't there 4 of them in the top 40 of worldwide quarterfinals or something like that?
Yeah, last year.
That Yeah, last year. So to me, that might mean that South America men are significant. But with guys like Fikowski being 2,500th or something that he was, like, part of me likes that there's no granularity because it means nothing. The athlete's performance in those workouts means nothing. So not having the granularity because it doesn't mean anything kind of makes sense. So in that way, why not just seed it based on their worldwide quarterfinal ranks?
Yeah.
Like, take convoluted math out, take all of that out, and make it a simple season where the previous competition is how your strength is ranked for the semifinals. That's how normal sports go. Normal sports is this season is what pushes you forward. And if you lose in quarterfinals, you're out.
Yeah, I agree. I guess like taking the opposite side of it, like in tennis, you're still playing on a tennis court versus an opponent versus semifinals. You're in a stadium, you're in a heat, you're competing against other people. Like it's competing in a live in-person competition isn't the same as doing workouts in your gym. Like it just each stage of the CrossFit game season just requires a different level of athleticism that we see every year people fall off. Like the same people score within the top 50 of the opening quarter or open every year, but then don't make it to the games. Um,
But the thing is, like, if someone like Fikowski is really low in quarterfinals because he just kind of like goes through the motions, then he has an impact on how many tickets go to the east side. And there's a chance that he'll be on that cut line. Like, if you make it their quarterfinal performance for games tickets at their semifinal, they I don't know if the athletes would actually act like they have skin in the game, but they might actually act like they have skin in the game come quarterfinals.
Yeah, like it'll make it mean something, especially maybe in some of the, I guess, like, kind of across the board. Like I think Royce Dunn, I think he punted one into the stands during quarterfinals last year, but still made it to semifinals and finished fourth. Like,
Yeah, so then had he not punted that into the stands and
yeah,
quarterfinals was used for the calculation, theoretically, if that was the system, Oceania could have earned a fourth semifinal spot, and then he'd be at the game. Like, I think maybe using like those smaller Asia, Oceania, Africa, those kinds of places where it's more up in the air of like who is stronger, who is how many people should go, where does it start like falling off in terms of like athlete strength. But something like that, like Marissa might have redone it,
yeah, yeah, maybe redone it, or yeah,
but he knew he could
put
make it,
more
so he
weighting
doesn't
to the
have to.
top end. Essentially, I think kind of both circled around that. It's just if you're 500 points difference or 500 spots different and it's 10 points, like
It's
it's
no
not a
impact.
meaningful impact when you have 20,000 or 10,000 points. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of too many points, not granular enough.
you know,
Kind of just doesn't really mean anything.
too many points in the wrong spots.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything?
Anything
Anything else?
else? No.
That's yeah. So that is our take from Franlong Analytics on the worldwide ranking. Let us know what you guys think. We may also try and pull our data together in a usable fashion and drop it on our Patreon. So if you want to actually look at like what was the weakest open finish of the 2022 semifinal qualifying athletes and worldwide quarterfinal, stuff like that. We will try and put it in a succinct way on our Patreon. So you guys can also geek out on this too. Like, we shouldn't be the only people with the data that can look at this and like play with scenarios and pull people in and out and look at what would be required for these continents and stuff like that to make significant change in terms of number of tickets and stuff like that. So we want more people to be able to weigh on it. That's kind of our goal at Franlong, to bring CrossFit data and stats to people so other people can look at it too, because then it makes the conversation a lot more fun. So that is it from us for today, and let us know what you think.
Follow us Instagram at Franlong Analytics and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Got some more statistics in there, plus updates on what's happening in the world of CrossFit. So it's a short read every Wednesday.
Sounds good. See you guys.